Welcome to another edition of MEED Market Talk. My name is Richard Thompson. I am the editorial director of MEED. So today we're going to look at the future of claims and dispute resolution and the role of digital data in reshaping that environment. And I'm delighted to be joined today by three leading experts in this field from the international consultant HKA. Michael McSorley is a partner at HKA. Jason Weller is a director at HKA, and Irina Akulenka is a senior consultant at HKA. So welcome to all three of you. Thank you for your time today. Michael, if I can come to you first. So let's just sort of get a baseline of what we're talking about. What are claims? You know, when you sort of reduce it down, how do you characterise a claim?
Yeah, to reduce it down to the sort of bare minimum, really, is a claim is just essentially, it's an assertion of a right from one party to the other party within the construction contract, normally seeking for some form of relief. Now, normally the claims come from the contractor towards the employer, albeit on occasion you get employer claims to contractor, but as I say, most of the time it's contractor to employer. The real basis of the claims can be, again, categorised simply into about 5 different sort of elements, if you like. We may have claims for variations, that's really changes to scope, so the contractor will seek a variation of order for that. There may be events which have caused a critical delay on the project. The contractor would then submit an extension of time claim for that. Financial claims, a claim for prolongation costs, under the circumstances that there has been a critical delay and the cause of that delay does entitle the contractor to time and money, that would be defined as an excusable, compensable delay event. You can also have claims for acceleration measures and disruption. Again, these are financial claims. So really, in a nutshell, that's the sort of claims that we deal with on a daily basis. Now, we either prosecute the claim on behalf of the contractor or we defend the claim on behalf of the employer. So that really defines what we're actually speaking about here.
Okay, very good. That's a great summary. Is there anything different about this region compared to, say, the European market or the North American market?
What I would say is that claims are more prevalent over here. Now, that's probably due to the fact that the construction industry, it's all cutting edge technology, it's all iconic buildings, it's all new engineering, use of new materials that have never been used before. So there's a real difficulty with that. And also as well, on construction sites, we're now dealing with multinational teams, all speaking different languages. So that causes a bit of problems as well, which can then lead in itself to managing projects on site, which leads to disputes. And remember as well, all materials generally are imported into the United Arab Emirates as well, which in itself can cause issues, particularly, which we can maybe speak about later, COVID-19 and the impact that has had within this region.
Okay, well, I'd like to come back to some of the sort of insights we can draw from that. Perhaps, Jason, if I can turn to you. So you're a director at HKA and you've long experience working in the claims environment, but you're particularly responsible for something called CRUX, which is a database at HKA tracking claims and disputes. Can you tell us a little bit, what is CRUX?
So the CRUX report is a report into the findings of our analysis into the causes of claims and disputes on projects worldwide. It's an analysis of over 1,400 projects in more than 90 different countries with a combined capex of more than $2 trillion. The purpose of the report is really to understand the issues which are commonly arising and causing these claims and disputes to try and drive better outcomes in capital projects.
Can we draw any insights on the Middle East market from the data that you have?
Yeah, well, what's quite interesting is that you do see very similar things coming up as the causes of disputes in all regions, which probably fall into the categories of change, design issues, whether that's late design or inadequate design information, or contractual issues, either interpretation or the administration of contracts. They are common in all of the regions, but what you see more probably in the Middle East, two issues is, one is change is more prevalent. And then
when you say change, so you're talking here about changes to the design once the construction portion has started.
That's right, changes in scope, but it's not always, interestingly, it's not always actually discretionary changes by the employer. Often changes come about because the design which was in place when the project started wasn't up to date. It wasn't up to date with the latest regulations, which meant it had to be updated and changed. And this we see very, very common issue on many projects in this region. And so what we've seen a lot is projects actually were put on hold sometimes for financial reasons. And then once those issues are resolved, then there's a big rush to get to site. And it may be that the process of going through and checking that design is still adequate for the regulations, or whether that needs to be updated hasn't been done. So it gets updated once the construction's in process, and this inevitably causes issues.
Well, I'll come back to that in just a moment because you've opened up quite a big area for discussion, but I'd like to turn to Irina next. You're a senior consultant at HKA. Now, I want to ask you really about the future of claims, and I guess this goes to the way projects are being set up with the increasing use of digital data and building information modelling, BIM. How do you see the landscape for claims and disputes changing because of data?
Just before I go there, Richard, I just want to talk to something that my colleagues already mentioned. I think in relation to regulations and the need to change design sometimes, we are only going to have more of those in relation to the COP26 commitments and what's going to come out in terms of sustainability, all things, climate change, etc. So I think that's going to be a completely new area of disputes altogether that we are going to all be dealing with.
So are you saying that a new area of disputes because there's this new set of regulations and sustainability is now becoming a higher priority? Or are you saying because of the speed of change of regulation?
I think it's a bit of both, because obviously commitments that different countries are going to be entering into, or already did in some instances, are going to be quick implementation, all about quick implementation. We haven't got the time to kind of go around it and take time to think about climate change. It's already happening. So it's kind of working very quickly with implementing new regulations, new sustainability targets for everybody. And I think construction industry is known for kind of lagging behind with these things in terms of either materials being used or the whole sort of carbon footprint of the assets that we keep building. So there's lots to consider.
Just ask on that, how do you foresee disputes emerging in this area of sustainability? Is it likely to be that the design is being completed, the construction has started, and then the client realizes they haven't got enough of or the carbon footprint is too high, so they want to change? Is that what you think?
For once, yes, but also I think let's talk about renewable sector, for example. It's a new sector, and for many players in the market, for example, if we talk about Middle East, not many contractors actually have enough expertise in this sort of new area of renewables projects. So I think it's kind of getting into the game while you don't necessarily have the expertise entirely, and you learn as you go. But that's going to be dealt with, employers and the contractors alike, hopefully, collaboratively. So that's another area. Again, all of these projects, new projects that are going to come into play to kind of battle the climate change. Infrastructure is old. How are you going to deal with that? Cross-border disputes and investment disputes.
That's very interesting. And of course, the UAE will be hosting COP28 in 2 years' time, so it's going to be front and centre for many government projects going forward. If I can just ask you then, moving to the point about data, how important is digital data on projects and the digitalisation of construction? How important is that as a potential way of reducing disputes?
I think, Richard, there are different angles to this. Whether or not we already collect enormous amounts of data on any given projects, And we try to use that data to either prevent claims, as you said, altogether, or deal with disputes in a more efficient manner. I think we do that. Whether or not all the data necessarily that's been collected is actually used for that, or efficiently used, let's say, in real time, etc., to sort of take preemptive decisions rather than being reactive about things. I think we are not there yet. Also in terms of the ownership of data, who has access to data, how reliable data is. Again, we are still through this sort of learning curve because the technology is developing so fast. We are unable as an industry to catch up with the pace. So it's kind of like we learn as we go. Almost.
So when you say ownership of data, so if we have a project that's under construction, you have the contractor, the subcontractor, the client, and do they all collect data normally, or does one of those collect data and then it goes onto a shared database? And the question is, who's responsible for the accuracy?
Exactly, and in addition to that, if you look at the fragmentation of the construction industry, I think you've got many different players. Big players, tier one contractors, okay, they are probably pioneers, consultants, some of this, the forefront of this digital transformation, but generally speaking, you have a lot of smaller players, be it suppliers, subcontractors, etc., who are not as fast catching up with this whole, digitalization thing. And then you've got, let's say, a project, and it only makes it even more difficult where the project is complex. Let's say you've got 20, 30 stakeholders. 2, 3 of them are using, augmented reality, digital twins and the likes, or maybe this cloud-based solutions where you've got the data being fed real time, you've got this decision taken in real time, but not everyone does it. And then it kind of defeats the purpose almost because, the reliability of what you have is not 100%.
Who's responsible for creating the data environment on a project? Is it the client, or is it the main contractor, or the consultant at the beginning of the design stage?
No, good question, because to be honest, to my mind, I think we all need to have the buy-in into this. It's not just the employer's responsibility, it's not just the main contractor responsibility, because as an idea itself, it has to be bought by everyone. I know it's a bit of an investment for many, some can afford, some not so easily can afford that, but in the end of the day, it has to be a collective effort. Collaboration, we keep talking about collaboration, and I think it's not just a buzzword for me anyway, it's kind of getting everyone into the game, be it, clients, dispute lawyers in-house, consultants, smaller tier contractors, etc., regulators. Everyone has to be around the table talking about these things, and that's, I think, why we're here today.
Well, the point of collaboration there, Michael, if I can turn to you, it seems to me that at the core of the construction industry in the region and globally, everything is set up in an adversarial way. People are counterparties to contracts and you're fixed on a price. To move from collaboration to away from adversarialism is quite a fundamental shift.
It is a fundamental shift, but I think we are seeing that certainly with intelligent clients now, when we're talking about records, etc., and what should be maintained and kept and who takes ownership of all that is now being prescriptive within certain contracts. So the employer sets out the sort of records he demands, and that's progress reports every month. That's cost records as well. As built records as we progress on a monthly basis. So all these things are now being prescribed, and I think there's more communication between the contractor and consultants to ensure that it is being maintained and the records have veracity. They're not just made up, they can be checked and they can be validated.
I just wondering if I can bring Jason in. So on the Crux report, Michael is making the point that things are progressing and the enlightened clients are thinking differently in a more collaborative way. Are you seeing evidence of that on the Crux reports? Year on year, or is the nature of the data changing?
No, not necessarily. It's not pointing that way in the Crux report at the moment. In terms of collaboration, what I think has been quite interesting, what we've seen over the last couple of years is, I think COVID has led to more collaboration between parties on contracts. I think because it was something new, and the only way in which to keep the project going and to keep building was for the parties to come together and work together to come up with solutions.
The downside of COVID, of course, it seems to me that now that we've gone through that period of the lockdowns and the digitalization and people finding new ways to work. But now we're going into this post-COVID inflationary environment, and we've got cost escalation issues. Cost escalation must be another source of dispute.
I think it will be. So first on that COVID point, I think that collaboration we saw going through, that some of that's coming to an end now as we come out of it, and parties are sort of then debating who's going to pay the bills in relation to overcoming those issues. That's one thing. And then, as you quite rightly say, now it's going to be inflationary risks. And I think the industry generally is just not set up for that. So we have lump sum contracts generally no provisions for cost escalation. And so it's going to be, I see, a big problem going forward.
Michael, if I can come to you back onto the actual process of dealing with claims. Obviously the claims arise, there are various factors, but how does HKA or how does an investigator start investigating a claim?
Right, it's an interesting question. A lot of people have the perception that one claim is the same from one job to the next. You can use the old template from a previous job, churn it out and just fill in the blanks. But claims are unique, the same as any construction site is unique. And really, any claim will be successful or will fail based on the facts, what actually happened. So the commencement of any investigation or any preparation of a claim involves, well, what actually happened? So it's the same old question, who, what, when, why, how and where. You've got to start delving into that to get the answer.
Does that all come down to recorded evidence? If it isn't in paper, if it isn't in writing, it didn't happen.
Well, that's the next thing I was going to say. That's exactly right, and that's why records are of extreme importance for both parties, specifically for a contractor. If he's making an assertion, he's putting forward something he sees as a fact, that must be evidenced in some shape or form, and that evidence can be correspondence, it can be updated programming, it can be your cost records, your vouching, identifying what activities were taking place in a certain part of the site over what period, what productivity you achieved in those areas, and that's vital for any decent quantum claim which deals with disruption, for example. So really, that's the first point of call when we're starting to investigate and look into a claim. It's what actually happened. We've got to understand the scope as well, of course. What was the contractor obliged to do? What were his obligations? What are his rights? Similarly for the employer, what were his obligations? Obviously it's to give site, it's to make payments on time. Has he done that? What's actually happened on the job? Why are we now in delay? And again, it's a thorough investigation of the records. And we tend to do that in various phases, or stages rather. A stage one would go in, would have a high level overview, maybe over a period of 3 to 4 weeks, what's actually happened on the project. So you've got to make sure what they're telling you has veracity and can be evidenced. So we listen to the story, as I call it, that they tell us. We then start to look at the correspondence and the records that are available in order to get our own understanding of what actually has happened on the project and why it's in delay.
In addition to all this risk, there is a lot of emphasis on the risk of admissibility of the data collected by this new tech, be it drones, be it this web-based sort of cloud-based cameras, etc. In different jurisdictions, obviously, law of evidence is different. So, is it actually admissible? How does data protection, data privacy, confidentiality come into play? All things cybersecurity, it's a serious issue. So, all of these new risks, as we get on with using this new data and new tech, there are different considerations.
Can I just ask about that admissibility element of it? So, what do you know currently? Have we had enough experience with the drones and BIM and data collection to establish some principles? What data is universally admissible and what is disputable?
To be honest, Richard, I don't think there is such a thing in relation to this specific matter as universally admissible data, at least not at this point in time, to my mind anyway, because even drones, different jurisdictions have different, regulatory requirements in terms of use of drones. For example, lately in the EU, as you probably know, we can't really use drones at the moment. In states, in different states, from state to state, it's different regulatory framework. So drone is flying over a site, or just taking videos and photos. There is someone's villa just not very far from the site. Again, privacy issues come into play. Perhaps in the UK, in Europe, in the States, versus what it is here, it's a different regime. So
that would suggest to me that your advice would be, don't use drones. You don't know what the rules are.
No.
I think it's a good point, but I think it's vital at the outset of the project to agree with the client example, what records he wants to be maintained, what records will be admissible, and what does the authority allow. Does it allow you to have drones or not? And if not, then you know that from the outset and you agree, right, we're not able to use drones. How else can we then manage and maintain these records that suits both parties and may avoid a dispute?
I mean, that must be the key point here, that you agree at the beginning with all parties what the framework is.
It's just also managing the risk, basically, managing the risk collectively, whether you engage, legal advice, at the point of tender, or I think that's very important to kind of just, okay, what are we doing here? Can we actually do this or that? How regulation comes to play, etc.
Okay, now, Jason, we're coming towards the end of our conversation, so I want to try and draw out some insights that we can get from the Crux data and from the experience of Michael and Irina. What can we learn from what you've got, and what have you learned in terms of the way projects are set up in this region and the causes of disputes?
So if we think about the main causes which are coming up again and again, we have the issue with change, which falls into two groups. One is client discretionary changes, which I think need to be minimised to the maximum extent, and then the issue with the design, ensuring to the best of your ability that the design is advanced and in accordance with the regulations before you start. I think that will help parties to minimise risks. In terms of contract interpretation, I think many of the issues here arise where disputes have arisen on previous contracts, and a developer or an employer will try to fix that problem. They will try and pass on that risk by just really putting a sticking plaster onto one part of the contract. So say they've had an issue with one part of the specification where they ended up having to pay out a variation because that spec didn't cover all of the scope. They will try and fix that by just changing perhaps that part of the spec. But in doing so, they might say bring in some design responsibility onto the contractor there. But it's then they make that change but don't necessarily reflect it throughout the contract. So immediately then you have inconsistencies in the contract. That part is saying that the contractor is responsible for designing this element, but the other part of the contract which says the parts which the contractor must design doesn't mention this bit. So immediately you have the grounds for dispute. So I think in terms of avoiding these contract interpretation issues, ensuring that any amendments to contracts are thought of holistically, and clients really need to take the appropriate professional advice when making these changes. I think also a big thing is what we commonly see is issues arising, say maybe early on in a contract, which if dealt with promptly could have been resolved, but they're not dealt with. People want to bury their heads in the sand a little bit maybe, and then those problems just escalate because then it results in cash flow issues on the project or deterioration of relationships. And
could it also be there's a lack of a mechanism on a project to resolve things quickly? I mean, some contracts have dispute committees.
I think maybe, but I think the mechanisms are there. It's just they're not being followed. So I think there is a lack of contractors are often still not submitting notifications. They're not submitting claims because of this. Often it's a feeling they want to try and maintain relationships with the employer. So they don't want to do this. But what happens more often than not is it just escalates. Then they end up with a much bigger problem with their relationship with the employer than what they would have if they'd gone ahead and submitted a proper notification, a decent claim, and then on behalf of the employer, the employers then also need to respond to these things. So contractors, some contractors are very good at this and they do it on time, but it doesn't help resolve the issues unless the engineers then coming back with a sensible response to those claims.
Thank you. Irina, I'd like to quickly look forward about how you see the landscape of claims and disputes changing, especially with the greater use of BIM and digitalisation. Where do you think we will be in this region 5 years from now in terms of the culture of disputes and claims? I mean, don't digital twins solve all of these problems?
No, I don't think so. I mean, think about also, for example, simple things like supply chain. Yeah, let's not go to digital twins even. Who has a holistic view digitally of their supply chain in one digital space? Probably very few. On a very few projects you would see that. So it's basically, as Jason said, rather than dealing with things preemptively, before actually problem becomes a problem, we deal with them reactively. So, okay, I've got a supply chain issue here. Let me find an alternative route or supplier or whatever. But that's not going to cut it. So it's changing mindset in many ways. It's catching up with regulations. I'm not blaming the regulator here, but
it's not about technology. It's not about data. It's actually people.
Right. Before technology comes into play, I think it's also we humans, we are the users of technology after all. How we use it. Do we use it well enough? Are we in real time using it and taking decisions as we ought to be? I think there are lots of considerations, but I'm very excited about the future of dispute resolution, by the way, with all things, not just claims and the use of data and this sort of tools, but also what's happening in arbitration. You can now run your arbitration fully on blockchain if you want to, as two parties. So all things, crypto and arbitrators, robots, etc. Whether or not many clients would want their case decided fully by AI, I think that's a question, of course.
And then, Michael, if I can just come to you for a final sort of sign-off, if you like. You've got many years of experience personally and HKA generally in this region and in dispute resolution. Is anything changing? If it comes down to people, as Irina says, I mean, are we seeing fundamentally nothing ever changes? Or
I'm a bit more optimistic about it. I can see small changes from mindset of clients from maybe 10 years ago. I think they are trying to make contracts slightly more balanced, more fairer. They appreciate that the risk within contracts should sit with the party who's best in a position to deal with that risk. So I do see a slight change there. Obviously, the contracts will still be skewed in their favour, but I think there's a sort of softening approach there, and they're starting to recognise that kicking the can down the road for the next 2 years on the life of a project doesn't help.
I mean, in this region, they have such big visions.
Yeah.
They're going to be wasting a lot of money if they allow things just to carry on.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. More intelligent clients recognise that now. More savvy clients recognise that now. And the feedback I'm getting is they'd rather deal with the claims now as they arise. If there's a genuine variation, whilst the engineers will try to kick back and not sign it off, I think the instruction is, if it's a genuine variation, get it signed off, let's deal with it and let's move on. The same with extensions of time. I see them starting to deal with them maybe slowly but surely, not as quick as they should. But I think, again, there's a sort of a feeling that that is the best way forward. And the point is, as well as Jason mentioned, contractors need to start to help themselves as well. If the contract says issue a notification in a certain form within 14 days, that is really what you need to do. There's no excuse that you want to maintain a relationship with the employer. You really annoy the employer if you don't advise him that there's going to be a delay in the project, because then he could take actions to mitigate that. So that's a false or a misconception, and that is certainly the way to go. So there's so many risks out there, which maybe 2-3 years ago we just didn't foresee. So yes, it's in everyone's best interest to get their house in order.
We have to do things differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
Time for
Otherwise, in 10 years we'll be talking about claims still, and how nothing's moved on.
But I'm afraid we've run out of time for today. So Michael, Jason, Irina, thank you very much for your time today. As we've discussed over the last half an hour, the uncertainty and the risk is rising in the region, but the opportunities to tackle these issues head on and to reduce the causes and the costs of disputes and claims absolutely are there with new digital data and new ways of working collaboratively. So lots of things to talk about, lots of reasons to be optimistic, and I think we've just probably touched the tip of the iceberg today. So thank you again to the panelists, and I look forward to seeing you next time on MEED Market Talks. Thank you.